Welcome to a What's New in 14.2 presentation. I think it's the third or fourth one this week, and we've got a few more left to go as we ramp up for another exciting big launch for v14.2. Today we're going to take a look at DevExtreme, the offering for HTML5 and Mobile. Now, the web is an ever-changing landscape, and DevExtreme provides libraries and frameworks that allow you to create fast, flexible, and responsive UI, whether you're targeting desktop, tablet, or mobile. The beauty is that you get to focus on the project at hand, and we take care of the nice aesthetics. Obviously, it's built using the HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS libraries, and you get to reuse your existing skills and knowledge. DevExtreme's 2 years old this week, and it started out directly targeting the mobile platforms and then expanded back into a set of web controls from there. And what we're finding is that now we've got this universal collection of libraries that work well across the mobile devices and or web. And of course, at the back of DevExtreme as well, we've got DevExtreme Mobile, which allows you to specifically target mobile devices, giving you a look and feel directly to the device. But in its 2 years that it's been around, it's certainly been used to produce some outstanding websites and mobile applications. So what's new for 14.2? We'll take a look by starting with some of the new controls that's been added to the suite. We've got some navigation controls like the accordion and the tree view. Now these two controls are specifically optimized for web browsers, so more of your desktop / larger tablets. The rest of the controls are optimized for both that desktop experience and also the mobile. So we've seen the addition of a tag box, the tab panel, a client-side, obviously everything's client-side, progress bar, a file uploader, and two new layout systems, one called the box layout system and the other responsive layout. We've also seen a new chart being added called the polar chart. Now, I'm going to be taking you through each one of these controls in depth so that you can see how it works and how you can implement it. But of course, release time is not just about what new controls get added to the suite. There's been a lot of additional work done on existing controls. The data grid, for example, you can now do group summaries and display totals and other information calculated across rows based on columns. We've introduced a new validation engine which the grid utilizes. Another huge feature for this release is the fact that the data grid now ships with a master detail presentation view. We've extended it by adding in some new filter modes so that your end users can select multiple columns and then apply the filter in one go. There's a new cell editing mode that will actually commit the data at a cell level back to the data source when the user finishes editing that cell, not just the row. Along with these features, there's been work that improves the performance and the rendering, so the speed of the grid. Next on the list is the vector map. We've introduced the ability to have multiple legends. You can now obtain things like the coordinates from clicked markers and any point on the map. We've added the ability for zooming, that it will zoom from your current mouse pointer position. We'll take a look at charts. We've added the new polar chart, as I mentioned just before. We've also added a number of new series, such as the stack spline. You can use error bars now inside certain chart types, such as scatter and line and spline, bar and area. This allows you to display errors or deviation or variances in your data. You can now add multiple pie charts to the same page by specifying diameters so that you've got full control. You've got the ability or more functionality behind interacting with legends, tooltips, crosshairs, and other chart elements that we've exposed for you. And along all those lines, we've also made changes and improved the user interaction for both touch and mouse. The gauge control now has a palette option so you can set the color. The range selector control has got the ability for you to select discrete data when using it. And then things such as the humble date box has also had some work done to it, where you can select the time now from within the date selector. Now, I mentioned just before that DevExtreme also has the mobile framework. So that wasn't left behind when the teams were working feverishly on the updates. In fact, for the mobile side of things, we've added iOS 8 and Android 5 or Lollipop support. For those that are familiar with the styling and everything that happens on the mobile side, we're not just talking updating a few pictures. And as you'll see later on in the simulator, the look and feel, everything down to the new emphasis that L-Design puts on things. So when you touch something on Android 5, you get this nice feel, the same wow factor that you would on a native created project. We've added modal views. We've added full support for templates, Angular-based project templates. We've added a new wizard that allows you to compile your application using the PhoneGap build server. We've introduced some new events, such as the DX transform, which allows you to get more information back from right clicks or tap and hold. We've also added events such as pointer leave, enter, re-enter, or out, so that you can work with better precision on those pointer movements around elements. And we've also provided full support for Cordova 3.6. Taking that one step further, we've also given you provision to manage your packages with NuGet. We've added full support for the version 4 of the OData spec. I mentioned briefly before about the validation engine. It can be used in its own right with any of the DevExtreme UI controls or with other third-party widgets. And the whole emphasis on the validation is its customization. You can now access the theme builder directly from within a DevExtreme project in Visual Studio. We're providing keyboard support to all our widgets, which not only enhances the productivity for your end user, but also brings it into line with government accessibility rules. And we've provided full support for Visual Studio 14 Client Technology Preview. So there's certainly a lot of information, or a lot of things going on for DevExtreme in this update. What I'm going to do now is jump over to the widget gallery and start stepping through some of the changes or some of the new features that have been introduced. I'm not sure whether Julian mentioned, but of course the team are on hand to answer any questions in the meantime that you can type into your GoToWebinar panel. Everything that I'm showing you here, you can do on your own browser. We know that GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar doesn't translate some of the animations and things quite as nicely as they happen in real life. So after the presentation, feel free to jump onto the DevExpress or js.devexpress.com website and experience some of these things yourself. Now, I mentioned the first navigation element that was on the list for the new controls was the accordion. Think of this as a navbar style expansion. It's a vertically stacked menu or presentation system. And what you can see here as I click on individual elements is that the item that was previously opened is collapsed and the new one's shown. I've obviously got some control over what's going on here. And you can also see a sneak preview just underneath this of the tag control in use. Because as soon as I select an element, it's updating that to show you what's selected. If I choose multiple enabled, I then get to open up two elements. And again, in the tag control, you're seeing both those elements selected. The other thing I can do is control whether I can collapse absolutely everything. You've got control over things such as the animation duration. But what's involved to actually put this into a project? Well, if I scroll down to the code window here, and one of the great things with the HTML5 or the DevExtreme website is that you can play around with it in real time. you'll notice I'm not just showing the code and the markup and the data. I've got this apply button. So you can actually jump in, make changes, and see it in real time without having to build your own solution. But from here we can see that in the configuration object, I'm applying the accordion items object to the data source property. If I flick over to the data tab, we can see that that is just a collection of JSON data that I'm binding at runtime. You can see that I can control all the different aspects there. As far as markup, controlling my template, implement the DX accordion control into your markup, set the configuration option, and then you can control what gets shown inside that context area with a DX template. Of course, DevExtreme supports Knockout and Angular as well as your standard jQuery. And there's no reason why you can't use other third-party libraries or frameworks as well. The next item was the tree view. Now, the name gives it away. It's a way of displaying hierarchy data. And there's a number of different ways that we can do this. This first demo is showing a number of elements, subtrees, etc. Here we can see that I can collapse and expand to any level. So I can take it all the way back to stores, or I can expand as I go. And then as I click on each element inside the list, I'm using the click event to display some information on the right-hand side. Again, if we sneak down to the code area, we'll see that that JSON object this time has got sub-elements and is providing that data in a hierarchy fashion. Here, in the markup, we're not doing anything special with templating, we're just showing the information. Come back to code, and we can see in the configuration object, we're passing the products data to the items property, and we're setting up this item click event. Allows us to show all that information nice and simply. One of the other views for the tree view is the plain data structure. This time we'll also notice that we're implementing the image inside the tree view itself. So you've got a lot of focus, a lot of control over exactly what is going to be displayed inside your tree view. Looking at the implementation, it's quite easy to achieve that really nice look and feel. But there's one other view for the tree view that I think is quite smart, and that is the item selection and customization. Here, not only do I have my tree view, which is expanding to however many levels, but I can select items, and I can select multiple items. And here we're simulating maybe a shopping cart. Now that information that's been rendered is also utilizing inline templating. So we can see that the function that's getting returned for the item template is picking up the price and presenting that inside the brackets as well. So again, showing you a nice way that you can interact and that you can provide custom layouts and feedbacks to your end users. Now the tab panel. If this is being rendered on a mobile device, it's going to look and feel like a tab panel to that device. Here we're looking at it in the web view, so we have a nice large interface. And I'm going to be pretending that I'm swiping with my finger here. So as I scroll across, you can see that the next panel is automatically switched to. As I get to Tom's Club, if I try and swipe, it's not going anywhere. I've got the ability to turn on this looping feature, which means as I swipe through, it's going to continue just to cycle through each of those elements. I mentioned in the first slide that I've got full control through templating as to the look and feel of the tabs themselves and also the content inside. If I wanted to, I could turn off the animation so that when I move to it, obviously with a browser and my mouse it's a little bit different, it's just going to switch directly between those elements. Implementing the tab panel, starting with the data view, we can see that I've got a collection, again, in JSON format of elements, and each panel's been given an ID. If I go to the code, we've got the configuration object, and I'm passing in that tab panel items to the data source. As far as markup, you can see again that we can utilize the template to control exactly what content the user is going to be seeing. Okay. Just removing some background noise. Switching to the next, and we're going to look at the tag box. Now the tag box, you might be familiar with other controls such as inside blogging software where you select categories. And the idea is it's a really simple way, it's a really space-friendly way of having selected items in a single line. So in default mode, I click on my select option and I get a list of items. As I continue to click on each item, it gets appended to that control. If I've selected an item that I no longer want to see, then I can click on the little cross and remove it from the view. The next line down is showing how to utilize a custom placeholder. So you can nominate the text that's going to be shown in the control to ask people to do their selection. You've also got the ability to disable, so you might have use it as just an information somewhere else and display that data but not actually allow the user to interact. And of course, through the binding options, you can attach it to any different type of data source. Add to that the fact that it supports templating, and you can include images, descriptions. In this case, we're putting the price in bold on the right-hand side, and you've got quite a powerful and nice-looking control. Taking a quick look at the code, we can see that here we were binding to a data source and we're creating that as an array in line. Again, if you want to play around with these things, certainly recommend that you jump onto that website and get a feel for what some of the controls or what some of the different items and configurations will actually be. Now the validation engine, as I mentioned, it was designed with customization in mind. You can apply it to any third-party widget, or you can use its UI elements in conjunction with the custom engine itself. I'm going to start with the name, and I'm just going to put in here P1, because obviously a lot of times people put garbage into web forms. As soon as I try and move off that particular element, I'm shown that there's an error. When I click on there, it's saying I'm not allowed to use digits in the name. So I'll get rid of the digit. Move off, and it's still not validated. There must be at least 2 symbols. And you can imagine the same thing applies through all these different controls. I'm just showing you the different types. So you've got date fields, you've got drop-down combos. If we have a look at what's actually behind here, we'll see that in the model, I'm creating these validation rules. So here we've got something called name validation rule. And inside the validation rule property, I'm specifying a type, a message, and then I've got the ability to actually set up things like regex expressions so that I can control exactly what's going on. So with that name example, we've got the fact that we don't want them to use digits, or the fact that there must be at least 2 symbols. So quite a powerful way of controlling that data. In the actual markup, switch through, it's a matter of adding the DX validator object into your markup and then specifying the rule that you want to apply. Of course, I did mention that that's also been added into the grid, which we'll take a look at in a second. Now the date box has been around for a while. Obviously it comes along with a nice pretty calendar. You can jump forward months, years, and select different dates. But what we've introduced in 14.2 is a time selector. And you get to control the different intervals for the time. Here we're showing a full day from midnight through to 11:30 p.m. And I can select on the time it will return it. That's great if I just want time. If I'm wanting to actually use a combination of date and time, we've got this really nice, presentable, touch-friendly control. Here I can select the date that I want, and on the right-hand side, I can choose from the options here as to the time. And you get a nice visual representation in real time to what you're selecting. When we're running long-term processes, we want, or should, not we want, but we need to provide some feedback to the end user to exactly what's going on. So we've got this client-side progress bar. I'm just going to simulate a in progress. Click Start, and we're going to see that the little indicator moves across the screen. Now with this control, you get to nominate whether your min and max values are. You get to work out whether you're going to do it in percentages and update it. It's just sometimes the little things that make all the difference to the end user. Next in line is the file upload control. Now, when you're wanting to provide some way of giving your users the ability to add files or insert images or videos to your website, it's nice to give them something that looks and feels like the rest of your site. And that's exactly what this control is going to do. Not only does it have the ability of selecting a file from the browser, you can actually navigate through different folders or just select a file. You can also select multiple files if you want. When that's chosen, it's going to show, or in our example, it's showing you some information about the selected file. It's also got full support for drag drop. So you can literally just drag files from your browser or from your file explorer into the control as well. Then we get to look at some of the power inside the data grid. Grouping and summaries, in particular the ability to display things such as the total and group summary information, is one of the widest asked for things when it came to the data grid. It's such a powerful client-side grid control. How would we implement something like this count, first date, and summary? If we take a look into the configuration object, we can see that inside the summary property, we have the ability of creating some total items or assigning them to the total items property. The count is as simple as nominating the column that I want to apply it to, changing my summary type to count. Now you can probably all guess, you've got things such as count, you've got average, you've got min, max, everything that you'd expect as far as summary types. We can see that for the order date, we've said that we want to return the min value. And then not only are we returning the min value from the date field, but we're also implementing a custom text return. Here we're using the globalized library to format the value and return it back as a month, day, year property. So you've got that complete control over what's going to be shown on the grid itself. And then we can see from the sale amount that we just did a sum and specified the formatting as currency. So the end result is that we see 39 elements. The first date was the 31st of December 2013, and we have a sum total of 431,000. We've also got the ability to create totals for groups. So not only are we doing it across the whole grid, here the grid's grouped by the employee. I'm just going to collapse it up a little bit so we can see. And out of my 4 employees, we've got the total number of orders that they're responsible for. Jim has 3, Harv has 15. In a similar fashion to what we saw with the other totals, inside the configuration object, we've got this group items property. We select the column, the field name, and again specify the format. Really powerful, yet easy to implement. One thing to note with these grid examples, if you look at the markup, there's very little there. Everything happens within the control and your configuration. Take that one step further, and you've got the ability to calculate custom summaries. Now, here I'm going to select another couple of rows, and then I'm going to press the Calculate Summary option. And what we're going to see, instead of 31,000 in the right-hand corner, it's going to jump up to 65,000. That can be implemented quite easily. We can see that the Calculate Custom Summary property is assigned a function that goes through and determines if the row is selected and then includes that into that amount. So giving your users some nice end-user functionality. If I remove those, see it return back to its value. Definitely one of the big stories for this release is the master detail view inside the grid. Quite often we present this grid in row format and we want to have some kind of drill down. We want to know more information about the data. In this instance, I'm looking at just a list of people that have been assigned tasks. So if I expand the top entry, I'm going to see that beautiful rendered sub-table or sub-grid, which is showing all the tasks assigned to that person. I can do the same for everybody else and see what's going on. Setting up this detail view is quite simple. If we take a look at the code, we're going to see the master detail property. And in here, obviously I've got control over the template, the layout, every aspect of how I want it to look and feel. We can see that through a cascading set of collections or properties that we end up adding this tasks collection on the current employee data to the data source here. We've set up the subgrid by nominating the columns. We've set the column auto width to true and other properties that we want to see. So the end result is that you can very easily provide that nice look and feel of a master detail presentation. We've taken that one step further though, because it's nice to have some of that information, but you as developers will keep coming back and saying, can we do this? And we love that. That's what the support center is there for, and we definitely love that feedback from our users. So using the API, here's an example of how you can change the behavior of that master detail view. You see, this time, if I select one of the rows, we're going to see that the previous row is collapsed. So how do we implement that? If we come down and have a look at the code, we can see that we have a onSelectionChanged event. And basically, all we need to do is fire the collapseAll event and then expand the row that you've just selected. So it's really quite easy to use the API to extend that functionality out. Now, I did mention early on about a couple of layout controls that we have. One's called the box layout and the other is the responsive layout. And look, these things are so simple to get to use. You can see here that I'm dealing with a particular layout. I've got different columns, I've got different rows. Think back to the old table days. I simply get to nominate what I want to see where and control all the different aspects and elements of that. I can nominate the actual width in fixed pixels, or I can say that I want it to be X percentage of something. As far as the markup itself goes, which is where this is going to take place, you can see that I'm using a DXbox control, and then I get to specify some of the different options in here. So I'm saying my direction for this first item is a row. I want it to be 100% width and have a fixed height of 75. And then as I cascade in there, I can add these DX item elements and set their properties as well. Now that's great for using fixed size and for very quickly putting together a page layout the way that you want it to. and certainly saves you messing around, having to create your own divs and style sheets and other things like that. One of the biggest questions as of recent times that we get asked is, what about responsive design? Now, I understand that DevExtreme is based on HTML, JavaScript, CSS, so we're already in that responsive arena. I know that Mahul next week is going to be presenting a webinar on the really cool features that we've added into our ASP.NET controls when it comes to responsive design. But we didn't leave that out for DevExtreme. What we've done is introduce a control called the responsive box. And this allows you to create your pages and your layout specifically for different screen sizes. At the moment, you can see that my screen is formatted for web. If I choose this inner option and go tablet, you can see that it's now changed in response to the fact that I'm emulating a tablet. I go one step further and choose phone, and I've now presented with this stacked panel type concept. So how is this achieved? Looking at the code, we set up some properties, and we've started to we're using some marked names. So XS for extra small, MD for medium, and LG for large, which represents in this case just phone, tablet, and web. If I look at my markup, you can see that it's very similar to what I was showing you with the box layout, in that you instantiate the DX responsive box and then apply the box options to that. And then inside each of the DX item elements, I can utilize what type of thing I want to show. So row 0, column 0, I want a col span of 3 if the media is set to LG. If the screen or the media tags is set to XS, SM, or MD, then on that particular item, I want the row 0, col 0, col span to be 2. So you can see it is very straightforward to create this dynamic layout depending on the type of screen the end user is going to be using. So with very little additional work from your projects, when you ship something out, you know that the screen is going to be exactly how you want it to be displayed on those different size elements or devices. I'm going to switch into maps and just give you a quick look at the vector map and some of the nice new functionality that was added. There are so many little changes that were added throughout the whole suite, so much so that I'm not going to go through absolutely every single one. But again, if you check out the website afterwards and you go to the demo list, you'll see everything is noted with either a UPD for updated or a little new tag, so you get to see what's changed between each of the elements. So we're looking now at the vector map, and we're showing two legends. We've got our first legend representing a percentage, and our second legend representing either a GDP or some other value. Of course, I've got the ability, when I mouse over, I'm seeing the tags. What I'm going to do now, if we come over to Australia, is I'm using my mouse to zoom. And the first thing you'll notice is it's zooming to wherever my mouse is. So I might come back over here, and you can see that the zoom changes depending on what's going on. Let's go back and let's zoom in on Brazil. So I'm not having to click and drag. I'm getting a nice UI interaction as you'd expect with the mouse. Now what I'm going to do is spend a couple of minutes inside Visual Studio and take a look at some of the new features that were added there. Here I've got just a boilerplate blank project that was created with the DevExtreme mobile wizard. For those that are new to DevExtreme mobile, inside File, New Project, I can choose DevExtreme and then select the application type I want. You'll notice that we have full support for TypeScript and or JavaScript. The multi-channel application simply allows me to select multiple output devices. So I might be targeting web, I might be targeting phone and tablet all in one project. So I've created just a boilerplate application. We'll notice straight away that I'm in Android 5 or Lollipop view. You can see also I've got my iOS 8, and from my different device sizes for my view canvas, I've also got the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. So they're now part of the 14.2 release. I'm going to run this application into the simulator. I'm just going to turn it landscape so it's a little bit easier to see. This is the iOS 7/8 view, and as I was mentioning earlier, it's not just about changing a couple of skins. In the actual user device or the guidelines, the developer guidelines, our teams go through and make sure that all the aspects, all the elements conform to those guidelines. So if a new way of drag to refresh was introduced, it gets introduced into our framework. If I switch to the Android view, you're going to see the Lollipop style appear as opposed to the traditional version 4, which of course was the black. If I switch between here, it's just a straight switch. Switch back to Lollipop. When I click About, you're going to see that nice effect happening in the background. And again, it's one of those things that I implore you to try for yourself because it's such a rich experience when you're trying it out either on your own device or in the simulator on your own machine. But there's so much work goes into making sure that the framework is up to date with all the standards that are out there. I mentioned before as well that you can actually get straight to the theme builder from within Visual Studio. That's as simple as right-clicking on your project and coming down to Run Theme Builder. So for those people that want to take the themes one step further, you can use the online theme builder. You can choose your base theme that you want to start with, and then you can start selecting different aspects or elements. It might be that I want a particular thing to happen on my button. So instead of it being this default blue, I can come through and select all the different CSS elements that need to be changed. Obviously, I can save that. I can import a previous one that I've worked on. But the key issue or the key element here is the fact that I get to call it straight from the context menu. If you're working with an older version of DevExtreme, you can use the DevExtreme project converter, which will go through because there have been a lot of changes internally with the way things are packaged. So the project wizard will go through and upgrade your project to the latest version. Of course, any questions or concerns with any of those processes, the teams are always on standby with the support center. Just jump on to devexpress.com, click on support center, and write your question. And it's not just about thinking, well, they might not have time to answer this. If you have a question or you have a suggestion, that's what it's there for. The other thing that's been added into this context menu is the Builder application template. Now, this version of DevExtreme, we've worked really hard so that it will work out of the box simply with any of the PhoneGap plugins. And then we've taken it one step further. See, if you go to the PhoneGap website and register as a developer, you can actually create a token that you can include in your DevExtreme template. And you can use the PhoneGap build process to build your application. Obviously, DevExtreme has its own internal build engine as well, that you don't need any external processors. You don't need a Mac. You don't need to go to a cloud server. But for those, and for valid reasons that prefer that option, we've now built that feature straight into the project templating. Once you've got your token, you'd come to this build template, and then if I was iOS, I'd have to set up, obviously, all my provisioning. I'm going to choose Windows Phone. Now, because I haven't added the token or anything in there, I'm going to receive a, hey, we didn't authenticate you. But friends, it's as simple as that. register at PhoneGap for their cloud build processes, and then step through the wizards. Okay, I'm going to switch to Julian and ask what sort of questions we've got in the background.
There's been quite a few questions, actually, and the team have been answering as you've been speaking. So at the moment, we're pretty caught up.
Excellent.
So.
Excellent. Well, then I'll just point out to the website again. If I get to my browser, head over to DevExpress.com. In fact, it's quicker to go to js.devexpress.com instead of navigating through the menus. And from within here, you've got access to the SPA, or the mobile development area. You've got access to the web development. Using the hamburger menu, you can jump through the documentation, you can jump through the samples, you can take a look at everything that DevExtreme and DevExtreme Mobile offers. All of the samples are available with the download, or even if you're running a trial version, or you can launch them via the website. And there's some really impressive samples there. We've got the skate shop sample, we've got the realtor sample, we've got a kitchen sink sample to take you through absolutely every element of DevExtreme. The documentation is phenomenal. There's not only the tech references, but there's the getting started guides. There's the how to build your very own or your very first application. And whether you're using the whole of the web or just focusing on DevExtreme Mobile, it's available for you.
So cool. Okay. Are there any demos available to run on a phone via a marketplace? So.
Yes, there are. Ha, I was quick with that one, Julian.
Oh, very good. It's like I almost asked you the question you were asking for. Absolutely.
No, we have published a number of demo applications on the stores. From memory, there's things like DX Workout. One of the other cool things, though, is that you can run the demos directly on your device right now by utilizing the really cool processes that they built into the simulator. This is also available with some of the online demos. But if you go back to Internet Explorer, you'll see here that there's the little QR code in the bottom left-hand corner. If you download the Courier application on either your Android or iOS device, you can scan that code and see whatever you're running locally live on your device, and that will give you the look and feel and performance of what you're going to be running. Now, over the last, I don't know, 18 months or so, I've been talking to a lot of developers, particularly obviously here in Australia, that have published apps using DevExtreme onto the app stores, and the response has just been phenomenal. In some cases, people can't tell that it wasn't a native written application using something like Xcode. Other questions, Julian?
Excellent. Yeah, sure. How well does DevExtreme work with the new Visual Studio tools for Apache Cordova? Now, that's part of Visual Studio 2015, so isn't it? I think.
Yes, I believe so. Look, my answer is that I haven't tried it.
Too soon.
And yes, we do. I mean, we said before that we have support for the CTP version of VS14, and which I think, in a sense, is tremendous to start with, because it's not even in beta, it's in CTP, and we're already adding the ability to use our controls in there for people to trial.
Okay. How to use DevExtreme with ASP.NET MVC? Big question, small question, big answer, I would say. Oh, Rahul has already answered that one, so we'll just move on. Report viewer and dashboard viewer in DevExtreme, not supported at the moment. When were the demos of the updates be shown live on js.devexpress.com. Paul was actually using the live demos, so they're up right now. That means we're about to release this thing. So stay tuned. In fact, they're answering the questions faster in the background than I can actually say them. So,
well, that's okay.
That's good. So
all of the demos that are on here right now are the latest 14.2 demos. You'll see we've got the filtering updates, we've got the data validation updates. They're all live.
Yep. So give it a couple more minutes. Well, not even that. I think we're caught up with all the questions. So I am going to take over again. So coming up this week, the rest of the week, our launch week, we have tomorrow Seth Juarez talking about the new changes in XAF, our Express app framework. Friday, on December the 5th, both of these are at 10 a.m. Pacific time. On Friday, we have Mark Miller talking about what's new for CodeRush in 14.2. Seating is limited for these launch webinars, so if you really want to find out what's happening in XAF and in CodeRush, register today to reserve your spot. Just go to devexpress.com/webinars. We have some other upcoming webinars as well, connecting your site to the cloud in ASP.NET. That's, if you have a look, that's on the 9th of December, so that's next week. The week after, Mehul Hari turns up with DevExpress ASP.NET responsive web design. So that's going to be an interesting one. And we go into next year, 2015, making the transition from web forms to MVC. Don't even know who's actually doing that one. Oh, Don is going to be doing that one. Cool. And you, Paul, just to remind you, on the 20th of January, you're going to be talking about Test Cafe and testing your web applications.
Absolutely. And Test Cafe is fantastic.
And I think that's about it. So if you have any questions about DevExtreme, you can either ask support at devexpress.com or ping Paul at paulu@devexpress.com. We're on Twitter. He's on Twitter. We're all on Twitter. So if you want some fun commentary, do please sign up for that. And I think that's about it. So thank you, Paul. Extremely interesting webinar and presentation. Thank you very much. And thank you all for joining us and being part of the presentation and asking some great questions in the background. And of course, thank you for choosing DevExpress. Bye-bye.